Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your host, Darius Capers of the Dynastyers podcast. You can check me out on Twitch at kungfucape.ttv. You can also check me out on my other social medias at Darius Capers or Darius_Capers on the social medias respectfully. And also give the Dynastyers podcast a follow, man, at the Dynastyers podcast on Instagram. Now, the Dynastyers have been committed to bringing y'all content every week for the NFL season, and the off season is no different. So today I'm here to bring you guys our first official YouTube video recapping the first round of the NFL draft. Let's get to it. So my goal today is to first give a summary of all 31 picks that took place in the NFL draft and give you guys my winners and losers and pretty much grade the picks that are important. I might end up going through all of them if I got time for it, so let's get to it. Pick 1 belonged to the Carolina Panthers via the Chicago Bears trade that they made a few weeks ago, and I've been on this guy since the college football season ended as being the quarterback 1 in this class, and that person was Bryce Young. I'm going to give this an A++. I truly feel like Bryce Young can and will be a generational talent at the quarterback position. I also feel like he puts Carolina in a chance to compete for that division year one. I mean, I know they don't have a lot of talent, but he has a way of elevating talent. Just turn on the tape of what he did with John Mechie and Jameson Williams, and then last season without. He made those guys look like SEC caliber receivers. So I'm giving the Carolina Panthers an A+ for drafting Bryce Young. Pick 2 and pick 3 I'm going to group together, and you'll see why in a second. The Houston Texans at pick 2 drafted C.J. Stroud, quarterback out of Ohio State. I'm also going to give this pick an A+. I feel like he was the second best quarterback in this draft. I feel like the two quarterbacks were on a tier of their own, and then the rest of the quarterback class was underneath them. And I feel like C.J. Stroud made a lot of believers out of a lot of people in that University of Georgia game. He showed mobility. He showed athleticism that he did not show all season. And although he had a lot of first-round pick receivers, I feel like he can make all the throws, and Houston will be happy with their guy. So the reason I'm pairing pick 2 and pick 3 together is because the Houston Texans traded back up into the first round with the Arizona Cardinals, and they came up to select Will Anderson Jr., potentially the first defensive player, the best defensive player in this class, and I'm also going to give that an A+. I mean, I know this past season wasn't the greatest for him, but if you look at the season prior, he was dominant, man, dominant. He's a really good player. I feel like he can be game-changing for that defense. And I always thought DeMeco Ryan would have got Will Anderson, but I honestly thought he would have got him at pick 2. So getting a player that a lot of people saw as the best player in this draft at the 3rd pick in the draft, it's game-changing. You can't do anything but give that an A+. Pick 4, the Indianapolis Colts stayed pat, and they drafted quarterback from the University of Florida, Anthony Richardson. Now, I'm a huge fan of Anthony Richardson. I feel like him and Hendon Hooker were the next tier of quarterbacks. Not a big believer in Will Levis, but I liked Anthony Richardson. Even though his tape did not scream, I'm ready to be an NFL starter tomorrow, his traits and his athletic ability do. Running a 4.4 in the 40.5-inch vertical. I mean, what else do we got to say? 6'4", 245. He's built like a linebacker playing the quarterback position. And I truly feel like him going to the Colts is a great situation for him. I would like to see them bring in a veteran just to help him out, because will he play week 1? Who knows? But, I mean, with him staying there, I feel like he's going to be a good quarterback in the future. I give that one an A. He has upside of an A+, but I'm going to give that one an A for right now. This was my first questionable pick. I mean, I know Seattle needed another cornerback on the side, on the other side of their defense. They hit in the cornerback position last year with Tariq Woolen, but taking Devin Witherspoon at 5, I feel like they could have traded back and still got Devin Witherspoon and still got some value out of this pick. I know there was a quarterback needy team that would have been willing to trade up to 5 to take a Will Levis, but with them taking him he was a great athlete. I mean, his pro day was amazing. His combine performance was amazing. He ran a 4.4 in the 40 as well. He definitely was probably the best man corner in this class. So them going up to get him, them staying there to get him makes a lot of sense. They like to run a lot of man coverage, a lot of cover 2 coverage. So I understand it, but I feel like they probably could have got him at 8 or 9 if they would have traded back with the quarterback needy team. So I'm going to give this a B+ because I'm a fan of Devin Witherspoon. But in terms of value versus the pick, I kind of have to knock it a little bit. Pick 6, the Arizona Cardinals. They were able to trade up and get Paris Johnson. They traded up with the Detroit Lions, and they were able to take the first lineman on a lot of people's boards. And I give this an A. Kyler Murray needed and wanted this kid on his team. He saw the need that they had, and it's the offensive line. He got banged up. He got beat up a lot. He's having to run for his life. Getting an offensive lineman that can play either tackle spot was necessary. And so I like the Arizona Cardinals doing that. 6'6", 312 pounds, 36 and an 1/8 inch arms. He's built ready to play tomorrow. At 21 years old, Kyler Murray might have his left tackle of the future. So congratulations. I give that one an A. The Las Vegas Raiders stayed at 7. They drafted Tyree Wilson, edge rusher / defensive end out of Texas Tech. Now, I give this one an A-. Tyree Wilson, besides his injury, when you cut on his tape and when you look at how he played, he was jumping off the screen, whether it was from the 3 tech, from the edge, from the 5 tech. Him being 6'6", 270 allows that versatility for him on the defensive side of the ball, and I feel like he will be a stud on the Vegas D-line. Him and Max Crosby will be a terror in that division next season. So I'm going to give that one an A-. I just hope he's healthy. I hope he's ready for camp, and I hope injuries don't plague him because he's a talented defensive player. Pick 8, the Atlanta Falcons. They stayed pat, and they drafted Bijan Robinson, running back out of the University of Texas. Shout out to Reese Xavier Bradley. When we did our mock draft, he actually had Atlanta staying here and taking Bijan Robinson. And it was surprising because seeing a running back go in the top 10, it doesn't happen much anymore. So I want to shout him out for having that insight. But I'm going to give this one a B+. I mean, best running back in the draft. He's essentially probably the best offensive weapon in the draft. It's nothing on the offensive side he can't do. At about 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", 215 pounds. He's a load to bring down. I mean, 3,000 all-purpose yards, 35 touchdowns. Last 2 seasons, that's amazing. Now, the only reason I'm not giving it in the A's is because they already had Tyler Algier, and I believe similar to what I mentioned about Seattle, they could have traded back and probably still got Bijan because I didn't see a team in the top 10 jumping out of their chairs to draft a running back this early. But a B+ is good with him being the best running back in this class by far. I think he'll make the Atlanta offense flow a lot smoother. They don't have to depend on Cordero Patterson. And even if they do want to still depend on Cordero, they have 3 competent running backs now. So I feel like Desmond Ridder will have an easier path going into his first full season starting with the weapons he has now. So give Atlanta a B+ for that. Shout out to that pick. This is probably the best pick of the draft. And when I mention it, you guys understand why I say that. Pick 9, the Philadelphia Eagles traded up with the Chicago Bears. And they traded up to draft Jalen Carter. Now, if we put all of the extracurricular stuff aside, this has to be an A++ pick for them. They already have a few of his former Georgia teammates on that defense already. Nakobe Dean. They ended up drafting another one later on in the draft, which is who I feel was the steal of the draft. I mentioned this yesterday. And they also have Big Jordan Davis on that D-line. I feel like they're turning into the Philadelphia Bulldogs with all of this Georgia talent on that defense. I have to give this an A++. Jalen Carter was a lot of people's number 1 player in this draft. I had him at maybe 3 or 4 on my board. I definitely had Bryce Young as the number 1 overall player and Will Anderson above him. But Jalen Carter is one of the best players in this draft. And the Philadelphia Eagles just got richer. With them losing Javon Hargrove, he comes in and replaces him tomorrow. If they can keep him focused, he will be the best player from this draft class. And rounding out the top 10, the Chicago Bears, they drafted Darnell Wright, offensive lineman from Tennessee. Now, I gave this one a B. I felt like Peter Skoronski was a little rated higher than him. I had Skoronski and Paris Johnson Jr. as my top 2 offensive linemen, but I can't be mad at this. I mean, he's a athletic freak at that size, at about 6'5", 300 plus pounds. He ran almost a sub 540. He's a freak. I mean, I can't be mad at them for doing that. He's going to be a great blindside blocker for Justin Fields. With Justin Fields getting hit so much, he was one of the leading quarterbacks in being sacked this previous year. I feel like they needed to go O-line. I just personally would have went Peter Skoronski, but I can't be mad at them for taking Darnell Wright because he's also a first-round top 15 talent at the O-line spot. So salute to them. We're going to go a little bit quicker through these later rounds because, we're going to try to get as many in as possible. Tennessee, they actually took my guy, Peter Skoronski, and I give that one an A. I feel like I mentioned, him and Paris Johnson were lineman 1, lineman 2 on my board. He's so versatile. He can play all 5 positions on the O-line, whether it's left side, whether it's right side, whether it's center. I feel like that helps them out a lot. Derrick Henry's still going to be there unless they trade him sometime tonight. So they need to build that O-line back up to be able to block for him. So I like that pick a lot. And I believe they ended up cutting one of their offensive linemen this offseason, if I'm not mistaken. So him coming in to start day 1, replacing him, will be amazing. So salute to them for getting a steal. I give them an A for that pick. This was another questionable pick for me, man. I love this player, but I feel like the Detroit Lions could have got him a little later in this draft. The Detroit Lions stayed at 12, drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm a huge fan of Jahmyr Gibbs. I feel like he was the only offensive weapon, consistent offensive weapon that Bryce Young had at Alabama this previous season. Coming from Georgia Tech, man, he really put himself on the first-round map, and I feel like he deserved to be a first-round pick, but I feel like they could have got him at 20. I mean, I feel like they could have got him at 20, man. He's a sub 4.4 guy. He had 100 catches this past season at Bama. Like I mentioned, he was the most sure-handed guy for Bryce Young. And 5'9", 200 pounds. They already had 2 running backs. They gave David Montgomery all this money. They still had DeAndre Swift. I heard they're looking to move DeAndre Swift now. So if they do that, it makes sense. But even if they keep him, I guess 3 running backs are better than none. So I'm going to give this a C just because, like I said, I'm a fan of Jahmyr Gibbs. So I'm not going to crucify the Lions for going up and getting their guy, but I feel like they could have got him a little later. Next pick, we have pick 13. The Green Bay Packers took Lucas Van Ness, edge out of Iowa. I loved Lucas Van Ness. At the Combine, he really showed his stuff. Although he wasn't a starter at Iowa this past season, he really showed that he could come in and be a guy. I believe they mentioned during the draft yesterday, he was recruited out of high school at 240 pounds. He's getting drafted at 275 pounds. So he put on 35 pounds of muscle in 2 seasons. So that just shows that he's willing to come in and work hard. I give them a B+ for this draft because I feel like they should have went wide receiver. They could have used a alpha number 1 wide receiver to help ease Jordan Love's transition into being the starting quarterback. But when you have a guy this good on the board, I can't argue with taking him where they took him. So give them a B+ for that. Salute to them. The stinking New England Patriots traded with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they came up to get Broderick Jones. I'm going to give this an A-. I was hoping Broderick Jones would have fell to my New York Jets at 15. He was probably the best O-lineman still left on the board, and the Steelers jumped up to get him. I felt like they needed to. They need some help on that O-line, and, I mean, I can't blame him for taking a guy that didn't give up a sack and, 300-something pass block attempts. I mean, I can't I can't blame them for that. I would have given them a higher pick if he would have fell to my Jets, but not being a Jets homer, I'm going to give the Pittsburgh Steelers a B+, A- for this draft pick. That was a really good pick. If he works on his technical ability, he'll be a great offensive lineman in the NFL. Pick 15, my New York Jets stayed home and they drafted Will McDonald, the fourth edge out of Iowa State. I just didn't understand this draft pick. If we would have took an edge, I would have much rather preferred us to take Nolan Smith. But we decided to stay here. We decided to draft Will McDonald. I mean, Will McDonald's kind of a smaller D end. He's about 6'3", 6'4", 240. He has good bend. He has good moves. But, man, if we would have stayed here and taken an edge, I would have wanted Nolan Smith. I give it a C+. He's a good player. He's a good player on the college level. I'm hoping that can translate. I feel like he really will only be a situational edge rusher for us this season. And I feel like we had other holes that we could have addressed. So I'm going to give us a C+, but hey, the Jets like their guy, so they went with him, and I'm going to believe and trust in that because we're trying to build a great defense to help Aaron out, and I believe we will. We will continue to have a great defense, but I just wanted us to go something offensive. O-line, wide receiver, come on, man. But it's okay. Pick 16 might have been some people's worst pick of the first round. This Washington Commanders stayed home and took Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback out of Mississippi State. Now, Emmanuel Forbes is a weird type of cornerback build. He's about 6'1", 170 pounds. They said when he came into college, he was recruited as like an athlete. He played receiver, kick returner, and cornerback in high school. He was one of the number one players in his class. So his playmaking ability is there. They also said he took back 2 or 3 pick sixes last year. So if you throw the ball around this guy and he gets his hands on it, it's going back to the crib. So I like that, but I just feel like with Christian Gonzalez still on the board, with Joey Porter still on the board, those guys were cornerbacks I had a little higher than Emmanuel Forbes just because of their size, their build, the competition that they went against as well, and their production against that competition. I mean, Joey Porter Jr. wasn't getting thrown at this past season, so he was my number one corner on the board. Him and Devin Witherspoon were like 1A, 1B. Christian Gonzalez was also in that discussion. So I feel like if they wanted to go corner, they could have just taken one of those guys. But if they like Emmanuel Forbes with the way he played this past season, his playmaking ability at the cornerback spot, I can't blame them. But I'm going to give this a C- just because of who was left on the board. And the New England Patriots, like I mentioned, them stinking Patriots, they traded back to 17 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they got Christian Gonzalez. 6'1", 200-pound corner, ran a 4.38, 41.5-inch vertical at the combine. He is a stud. I'm not a Patriot fan, but I have to give this one an A+, man. He's going to come in and be one of, if not their best cornerback day one. He has the build, he has the tape, he has the athletic ability. I feel like he's going to be a stud for them. It just, they don't miss at the cornerback spot, man. I mean, Ty Law, Stephon Gilmore, Jonathan Jones, like, they don't miss. I mean, I know once the quarterbacks typically leave the Patriots, they're not much better. But when they're in the New England uniform with Bill Belichick calling that defense, they are the real deal. I will not be surprised if you see Christian Gonzalez as a multi-time Pro Bowler, even getting All-Pro or 2 in his time in the NFL with the New England Patriots. I won't be surprised. Pick 18, the Detroit Lions with another questionable pick. They took middle linebacker Jack Campbell out of Iowa. Now, I give it a B-. I feel like they needed a linebacker in the middle of that defense to help stop the run. They were one of the worst run defenses this past year, so I understand it. But again, this is a guy they probably could have gotten 25, 28, 30, maybe even in the second round. So I believe they mentioned he wasn't even a top 35 prospect on the board. So he probably would have been there in the second round for them. But again, taking it from Henry, when you know your guy, when you want your guy, you see a guy that you like, go up and get him. So I understand it, but I'm going to give them a B- because I personally wouldn't have taken a linebacker in the first round this early, at least, especially when they have a lot more needs. I would have probably went in another direction. And Tampa Bay, they got a steal. I like this guy, and you guys, hopefully y'all agree with me that Tampa Bay at 19, they took Khalid Kancey, defensive end / defensive tackle, just defensive lineman extraordinaire out of the University of Pittsburgh. 6'1", 280. He ran a 4.67 40. I know he's undersized at the D tackle spot, but with him and Vita Vea, that gives you the perfect balance of run stopping mixed with pass rushing at the D tackle spot. I feel like Khalid Kancey will be a stud at the next level. They're comparing him to Aaron Donald. I'm not going to go that far, but I truly feel like he can be a stud at the next level. I'm giving them a B+ for this pick. Congratulations to Tampa for getting one of my favorite guys out of this past draft. Pick 20, Seattle Seahawks. They took wide receiver 1 on a lot of people's boards. I felt like this wide receiver class was kind of up and down, so I feel like they're all in the same tier, but they took Jackson Smith and Jigba, and he can come in and be their slot receiver day one. I like the value of this pick, plus his talent. He was a talented player last season at Ohio State. This past season, he was actually injured, so the season before this, he was a talented player. He played with my guy Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and he was the best receiver out of all three of them when he was healthy. So the hamstring injury hampered him this past year. I have to give them an A for this pick because he can come in and be that slot guy with DK Metcalf and with Tyler Lockett outside. So Seattle got a steal, man. Geno Smith is going to have a tremendous offense next season. I love it. Congratulations, Pete Carroll. This was a home run pick at pick 20. Pick 21, the Los Angeles Chargers, and I believe this was one of the picks I actually got correct. They stayed at 21 and took Quentin Johnson, the biggest receiver in the draft, 6'4", 210 pounds, out of TCU. I give this a B+. I feel like it was a seamless fit with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. This gives Justin Herbert another weapon on the outside. I like Keenan Allen playing the slot, and with his injury history, he's kind of sort of not as reliable as you'd like, but this takes some pressure off of Mike Williams having to be that every time targeted receiver. Quentin Johnson, if he learns how to catch with his hands instead of his body, it's funny to say that with an NFL prospect coming in, but that was one of the knocks on him. He did a lot of body catching. I feel like if he learns how to high point the ball better, if he learns how to use that 6'4", 220 frame, he can be a stud wide receiver. And with Justin Herbert throwing him the rock, it'll make it easy on him. So I give this one a B+ as well. Salute to the Chargers for getting a receiver that I really liked in this draft. Baltimore Ravens. This was another pick I believe Reese got right. So salute to Reese. He had them taking Zay Flowers out of Boston College. From what they're saying, Zay Flowers is just a offensive weapon. You can't even call him a receiver. He's so fast. He can separate. He can do everything. You just have to get this kid the ball. And so I love that. He can come in. He can play the slot. With Lamar Jackson getting that $260 million extension, he needs weapons. You need to make Lamar Jackson's offensive load as less as possible. You're not trying to have this guy at 26, 27, 28, 29 with the duration of this 5-year contract still running the ball as much as he is. You got a guy like Zay Flowers. He can run those end arounds. They can change that offense and just get him the rock, and that's what they need to do. So I like that pick. I'm going to give them an A. I personally would have liked to see them get a guy like Jordan Addison just because of his receiving ability, but I don't blame them for taking a Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is a offensive weapon. Just get him the ball, and he will make it happen. So he's going with OBJ. He's going with Rashad Bateman. That's a trio of pretty nice receivers with Mark Andrews at that tight end spot. So I look to see Lamar have a bounce back season. Be on the lookout for Baltimore, man. The offense is going to be something. Pick 23, the Minnesota Vikings actually took Jordan Addison out of USC to pick right after Baltimore. I like it. I mean, he barely got 4.5, but he's a good hands guy. I like him in terms of route running and hands. I feel like he would have been a nice fit with the Ravens in terms of all the speed they have on offense already. But with him going to play next to Jettis, I give it a B+. That gives Kirk Cousins another weapon. Kirk, you have no excuse now. I know they lost Adam Thielen, he came to Charlotte, He came to Carolina to play with the Panthers, but you're replacing him with a competent receiver. You still got KJ Osborne. You still got the best receiver in the league. You need to do something this year. So I give that one a B+. Pick 24, the New York Giants took Deonte Banks. Deonte Banks was a corner that my brother liked a lot. I give this pick a B. He's another good man cover guy. He's sub 4.5. He's a little slower, but he's a bigger corner at about 6'1". He's a big corner, so I like that. He's actually a good athlete. He's a really good athlete. So I mean, with his jumping, everything, they have a good young defense building there in the Giants. So I'll give this one a B+ as well. I like him, Deonte Banks. Henry knows a lot more about him than me, but I think he's a good player. 25, the Buffalo Bills traded up with Jacksonville, and they took Dalton Kincaid, the best tight end in this draft, and I give it an A+. This allows, similar to what I mentioned about Lamar, as Josh Allen starts to age, allows him to use that arm talent a lot more than those legs. He has nothing but weapons now. I mean, I would have much rather seen them get a receiver, but with the receivers left on the board, I guess they figured Dalton Kincaid was the best option, and I'm okay with it. Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, that's a good tight end duo. I like it. He's more of a moves tight end anyways. He can play the slot. He can sometimes play some wide receiver. He was a wide receiver coming into college, so I like it. Shout out to them for getting him. Got to give it an A+. The Dallas Cowboys had a questionable pick as well. I feel like they needed a tight end, and even though they wanted Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer was sitting right there for him. I feel like they should have took him, but they chose to take Mozzie Smith, defensive lineman out of Michigan. I have to give this a C. I know they said in terms of size, speed, strength, that I believe they mentioned he's the Anthony Richardson of D tackles because he's 6'3", 6'4", 320 pounds. He's a big man. He's strong, can run fast. But they said he's just raw and he didn't really jump off the tape. So I got to give it a C. I mean, maybe he comes into the league and playing in the NFL, they allow him to do a lot more than he was able to do at Michigan. But I don't know. Is it his motor? What is it? And if I'm having to question that in the first round pick, then I have to knock it a little bit. So I'm going to give them a C. I feel like they should have took Michael Mayer. That would have been a tremendous need that would have assisted Dak Prescott. But I'm going to give this a C. They're trying to build that D-line. They're trying to build that defense in general, and I get it. 27, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they took Anton Harrison, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. And I'll give this one a B+. He's a young offensive lineman. This offensive lineman class was really young. He was 21 as well. He's strong. He's fast. At 6'4", 315. I mean, I don't see why not. They lost Jawan Taylor this offseason, so he can go right in and start tomorrow. Hopefully he doesn't have Trevor Lawrence running for his life because he's not as technical sound as Peter Skoronski or as even a Paris Johnson Jr. That's saying something. So hopefully he gets in the league, gets good coaching, learns the technique of the game, and is able to help out Trevor Lawrence. But I'll give it a B+. He's a good potential lineman. I like that pick a lot. Pick 28 might have been one of the best value picks. The Cincinnati Bengals took Myles Murphy, former 5-star and edge rusher from the University of Clemson. Now, not this past season, but the season before, Myles Murphy was looked like as a top 10 draft pick. And him coming back to school, he didn't have the greatest tape this past year, but I mean, 6'5", 270, you can't teach that. You can't teach that at all. He's a former 5-star for a reason. I feel like they're building a good defensive line there in Cincinnati. It's him, and it's also Trey Hendrickson. So they have two edge rushers. I mean, I'm pretty sure Myles Murphy, when he gets to the NFL level, he'll be able to come in and produce. So as long as he stays healthy, that's really the main thing is his health. I give that an A+, man, in terms of value where they got him at. The most important positions in football, in my opinion, are quarterback and those guys that go hit the quarterback. And he's definitely one of those guys that can go get the quarterback. So shout out to Myles Murphy. I give that an A+. Good job, Cincinnati. Pick 29, the New Orleans Saints. They took Brian Brzee, Miles Murphy's teammate, and also D lineman out of Clemson. The only issue with him was, man, he was just injury prone. He's another 5-star guy Clemson had, number one player in his class actually, and he just was very. He suffered a lot of setbacks, a lot of injuries, a lot of hardships at Clemson, from him tearing his ACL to his sister passing from cancer. Prayers up to his family, man. I salute to him for sticking with it, man. You know, something like that will be enough to make a person want to stop. And he didn't. He kept going, and look at him now. He's a first-round draft pick in the NFL. So I give this one an A-. I feel like he's going to get in, he's going to get healthy, and he's going to show why he was the number one player in his class. And like I mentioned, man, in terms of value versus the talent of the player, I have to give this an A-. Brian Brzee is one of those guys. So salute to the Saints as well. Pick 30. Philadelphia Eagles. Nolan Smith, edge rusher out of Georgia. So like I said, at the beginning of the draft, I kind of jumped the gun when I was talking about the Philadelphia Bulldogs defense. But this is the fourth player from that Georgia defense that they have within the past 2 years. So Nolan Smith at 6'2", 240, man. He tore it up at the combine with a 4.39 40. He's just fast. I mean, he's fast. He's explosive. He can get to the quarterback. When he's 100% healthy and he's coming in on that defense for Philly, I feel like he'll be a tremendous producer for that defense. I give this an A+. I feel like they had one of, if not the best drafts yesterday in terms of talent and where they got the talent. And shout out to Philly, man. A+. Nolan Smith. Y'all had an A+ draft. Last but not least, the Kansas City Chiefs, the home team. They stayed home. They took Felix Uzama, edge out of Kansas State. He's actually from Kansas City. They said he was about to go to Missouri, and he ended up going to Kansas State. So he's from the area. He gets to stay home. He was Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year, man. They're building a young defense there as well. I like a lot of these draft picks that they made. I'm going to give it a B+. They have a young defense. They needed more help on the D-line. I would have liked to see them maybe go with a linebacker. I also wouldn't have minded seeing them going to get Joey Porter Jr. Can never have too many good cornerbacks with all the receiving talent they have in this league now. But like I mentioned, a guy that can go get the quarterback, I like that pick a lot. I give them a B+. If I'm saying who won this draft, my winners of this draft will have to be, like I already mentioned, the Philadelphia Eagles. That's just abundantly clear. Philadelphia getting Jalen Carter, getting Nolan Smith where they got him, and where they got Jalen Carter as well. They're easily winners of this draft. A second winner for me, I would say Carolina. Carolina got my quarterback one, the guy that they believe can be their quarterback for the next 8 to 10 years, and I love that. I think Bryce Young has that type of talent. He's going to have the city of Charlotte, the state of North Carolina, the area of the Carolinas buzzing. Maybe it's because I live here and I feel like that. I am going to be rocking me a Bryce Young jersey even though I'm a Jets fan, but I like Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young can have them, like I said, competing in that division tomorrow. Third winner, of course, the Houston Texans, man. I know there was speculation it was about 12 to 14 first-round talented guys in this draft. They got 2 of them. They got 2 of the top 10 probably. So with C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson coming in, man, that can be game-changing for the Houston Texans as an organization. I mean, Will Anderson, he's a stud. I mean, and C.J. Stroud is quarterback too. So, and it was it that big of a gap between him and Bryce Young? I don't know. I feel like it was a bigger gap from him to quarterback 3 opposed to Bryce Young and him. So I would say that's a great draft for them. You can't argue with that at all. If I'm still just going through just to see a couple other winners, I mean, I really feel like Philly and Houston were the main winners in this draft just because of, like I mentioned, the talent of the player versus where they got him at. Loser of the draft, I hate to call anybody a loser, but as of the first round, I'm going to say Detroit is a loser. I don't like taking a guy in Jahmyr Gibbs or Jack Campbell, where you could have probably gotten them in the 20s if you wanted to trade back again, get two 20s picks, allow a team to come up and get Will Levis, get a quarterback, then you could have still got Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell. But I'm going to say they're losers just for that reason and that reason alone. Another team that I had questions about their picks, let's go with my Jets, man. I feel like with the talent still left on the board, I would have much rather us go with Christian Gonzalez. I mean, I know that would have been too much of a good thing, but having him and Sauce Gardner on each side would have been insane. I don't know why we went edge. Well, I know why we went edge because we needed edge, but I don't know why we went that edge specifically. I would have much rather wanted a Nolan Smith. I would have much rather wanted a Khalid Kancey. It was a lot different options that we could have went with instead of going with Will McDonald. And I mean, I like him. He was good. He was good in college. I just hope he continues to be that in league. I hope he puts on some muscle because he needs to. Another loser of the draft for me, I would say the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys had a clear need at tight end, a clear need at another wide receiver, and instead of choosing to trade up and address that need on the offensive side, like getting another weapon, they chose to stay pat and draft a D lineman. Maybe this kid, Mazi Smith, will come in and be game-changing. Maybe he'll be the next Aaron Donald, and I'll eat my words. But when there's such a glaring need on offense, the points are how you're going to beat teams. I mean, they had the number one defense last year, essentially, and what did it get them? So they needed an offensive weapon, and they chose to go defense. So, I mean, I don't know, but hopefully Mazi Smith sees all the hate he's getting, and hopefully he comes in and just tears up the NFL, because I love to see guys succeed. I'm just so ready for this season, man. I'm ready to see good football. My Jets should be a big player. I'm just excited, man. But there you have it. That's the first round of the NFL draft, recapped, graded by me, and I gave you my winners and losers. So if you got to this point in the video, man, I truly appreciate you guys. Please drop us a sub and just be on the lookout for all the different types of football, basketball, sports content in general that we're going to bring you guys on this The Dynastyers podcast channel. And make sure you give us a follow on the Instagram channel. The Instagram is The Dynastyers podcast. Please do that and just keep up with everything we're doing here, because we're going up. I appreciate you guys for tuning in if you stayed this long. Again, it's your boy Darius Capers, Kung Fu Cape. Let's get to it. And until next time, peace.